Mrs. Alvarez had taught second grade for 15 years, but nothing in all her experience prepared her for this little girl. Lena, just 6 years old, small for her age, with wide eyes that watched everyone, but rarely blinked. Lena was quiet, observant, and unnervingly still. She didn't speak unless spoken to. She didn't play at recess. And most oddly, she wouldn't sit down. From the very first day of school, Lena stood beside her desk, while the other children scribbled in their notebooks, giggled during story time, or rested their heads on their folded arms. No matter how many times Mrs. Alvarez gently encouraged her, Lena only offered a faint shake of her head. "Do your legs hurt, sweetie?"
"No, ma'am."
"Are you nervous?" "No, ma'am." But she would not, could not, sit. The school counselor, Miss Joyner, tried to engage with her several times. She used puppets, coloring books, even let Lena pet the therapy dog that visited once a month. Lena responded with polite nods and smiles, but her body remained tense, her eyes distant. Every time they asked about her home, about her mom or dad, her lips sealed tighter than ever. It became the talk of the teacher's lounge. Maybe it's a sensory issue. Could be trauma. Poor thing. You never know what happens behind closed doors. But speculation helped no one. The principal asked for patience. The district assigned a child psychologist. The nurse checked her for bruises and found none. Still, Lena stood. It was nearing October when something unexpected happened. One morning, the heater in room 2B broke. The children were moved temporarily to the art room, and while they waited for their new seating chart, the kids clustered around shared tables. That's when Lena found herself standing beside a tall man in overalls, adjusting a wall vent with a wrench. He had a bit of oil on his cheek, a tired face, and gentle eyes that met hers as she stood quietly nearby. "Hey there," he said with a kind smile. "You the teacher?" Lena gave a shy shake of her head. "I guess not. Don't look old enough." He winked. "I'm fixing the heater. Name's Jake. What's yours?" "Lena. Nice name. You know, Lena, standing that long must be tiring." She didn't reply, just watched. Jake returned to his work, but over the next few days, whenever he came back for follow-up repairs, Lena seemed to find a reason to be nearby. The janitor, Mr. Ellis, told Jake that Lena didn't talk to anyone, but somehow she liked him. Jake was a single father. His daughter, Molly, was in the same grade but in another class. Since his wife passed away in a car accident 3 years ago, Jake had done everything alone. Cooking, cleaning, working late, helping with homework. It hadn't been easy. He fixed heating units and school plumbing during the day, and sometimes bartended at night to make ends meet. Molly was his world, and when she smiled, it made all the struggles worth it. One afternoon, Jake saw Lena standing again, alone on the playground. He was replacing a broken water fountain nearby, when he decided to speak up. "You know, I used to be afraid of sitting down, too," he said softly. She blinked at him. "When I was about your age, thought if I sat still too long, someone might come up behind me." "Silly, huh?" Lena stared. Then, quietly, she asked, "Did you get in trouble?" Jake froze. That wasn't a child's question. It was an echo of experience. "No," he said, "but someone else did. A long time ago. Grown-ups are supposed to protect you. If they don't, that's not your fault." Lena looked down. Her little fists tightened at her sides. "Do you like pancakes?" Jake asked suddenly. She looked up. "My daughter says they fix almost anything. Want to try some?" I'm bringing some by on Friday for the teachers. And for the first time, Lena nodded. That Friday, Jake brought in a batch of fluffy pancakes with syrup and strawberries. He found Lena waiting by the art room door. She didn't say much, but she sat on the edge of a bench while she ate, chewing slowly, cautiously, like it was all too good to be true. Mrs. Alvarez watched from the hallway, heart-aching. That same evening, as Jake packed up his tools, Principal Harmon approached him. "Jake, can I ask you something odd?" "Sure." "It's about Lena. She seems to trust you. Would you consider joining our new after-school mentoring program? Just for a few weeks. Nothing fancy. Just listening, talking, being present." Jake hesitated. He already had so much on his plate. But then he remembered the way Lena's eyes lit up for half a second when he offered pancakes. "I'll do it," he said, and that's how the bond began. Over the next few weeks, Jake started spending time with Lena after school. They played checkers. She helped him sort tools. Sometimes she sat. Sometimes she still stood. But she talked more and more. Not about her home. Never that. But about clouds, dinosaurs, and sometimes nightmares she didn't explain. One rainy Tuesday, she quietly whispered, "Sometimes the couch is safer." Jake didn't push. He just listened. But that night, something didn't sit right. He tossed in bed, Molly asleep beside him after a movie night. Lena's words played on repeat. The next day, as he dropped off Molly, he noticed Lena had a slight limp. When he asked about it, she flinched and said she tripped. Jake wasn't convinced. He reported it to Mrs. Alvarez. She called Miss Joyner. By policy, they had to call Child Protective Services. That afternoon, a caseworker visited Lena's home. But no one answered the door. The house looked quiet. Too quiet. The neighbor mentioned the mother hadn't been seen in days. A foul smell drifted from the garage. That's when someone called 911. What they discovered behind that door would haunt the town forever. But for Lena, it was the start of something else. The sound of sirens shattered the silence of the cull. D-sack as red and blue lights reflected across the windows of a quiet, gray house. Lena's home. Officers stepped cautiously toward the door, flashlights cutting through the darkening sky. One of them held a crowbar. Another kept his hand near his holster. Inside, the smell hit them first. Something sharp, something wrong. Jake stood at the edge of the neighbor's lawn, holding Molly's hand, trying to steady his breathing. The caseworker had called him after Lena didn't answer the door. Somehow deep down, he knew something terrible was about to unfold. He just didn't know how bad. The door creaked open under the officer's strength. The house was dark, silent. Dusty air hung thick in the front room. Toys lay scattered, unplayed with. The television screen blinked in a frozen static haze. Then came a scream from a female officer who had entered the garage. What they found was Lena's mother, collapsed unconscious, severely dehydrated, and surrounded by signs of drug use. She'd overdosed, they later learned. Not recently. It had happened days ago. And Lena had been alone for days. No food, no electricity, no help. She had slept on the couch in fear, never sitting on the floor, never leaving the house. Her little body had endured starvation and silence, and still she showed up to school, never saying a word. The bruises weren't fresh. They were layered, some from neglect, some from deeper scars, both physical and otherwise. And somehow, she'd still smiled at pancakes. Lena was taken to the hospital that night. The nurses said she didn't speak for hours, not even to the social worker. But when Jake and Molly arrived and peeked around the curtain, Lena's face lit up for just a moment. Jake stepped closer. "Hey, warrior." Lena blinked. And then, slowly, carefully, she sat up and whispered, "Pancakes." He smiled, coming right up. Over the following weeks, Lena was placed into emergency foster care. Her mother, though alive, was in no condition to regain custody. She'd entered rehab, facing a long list of charges and an even longer road to recovery. Jake couldn't stop thinking about Lena. Neither could Molly. She asked about her every day, drawing pictures for her, writing cards in the shaky handwriting of a 7-year-old that read, "You are my brave best friend." Eventually, Jake petitioned the county to become Lena's foster parent. At first, they were skeptical. A single dad, low income, long work hours. But then they read the letters from Mrs. Alvarez, from the principal, from Molly's school counselor, all saying the same thing: he saved her. And she saved something in him too. 6 months later, Lena moved in with Jake and Molly. At first, she still wouldn't sit at the dinner table. She stood nearby, clutching her plate in both hands like it might vanish. But Jake never forced her. Instead, he sat on the floor beside her with his own plate and said, "We eat where you feel safe." One day, she climbed up onto a chair on her own. No announcement, no questions. She just sat. That night, Jake cried quietly in the kitchen after the girls went to bed. A spring brought change. Lena started speaking more at school. Her teacher noted how she began answering questions, even raising her hand. She joined art club. She made a best friend. She still had moments of fear, flashbacks that came out of nowhere. But she'd learned to breathe, to talk, to ask for help. Jake enrolled in night classes so he could qualify for better paying work. The school hired him full-time as maintenance director and offered him a staff discount for child care. Molly beamed when he picked her up at 3:30 each day, and Lena would cling to his sleeve for a moment before releasing it, like testing if he was real, if he was staying, and he always was. One night, Jake tucked both girls in after reading a bedtime story. Just as he turned to leave, Lena whispered, "You don't have to sleep in the chair anymore." Jake paused. "You sure?" She nodded. "I feel safe now." His eyes welled. "Then I'll be right next door, okay?" "Okay," she whispered, pulling Molly's hand under the blanket. As he turned off the light, Lena added, "You're my real dad now." Jake stopped in the hallway, heart catching in his throat. "I always wanted to be." A year passed. Then, too, Jake officially adopted Lena the following summer. At the courthouse, Lena wore a yellow dress and clutched a stuffed dinosaur. Molly held her hand as they both stood before the judge. When asked if she understood what adoption meant, Lena said, "It means he won't leave. Ever." Jakey knelt down and pulled both girls into a hug so tight even the bailiff wiped a tear away. Now, years later, Lena tells her story to classrooms across the state. Not the scary parts, but the healing ones. She speaks about kindness, listening, and how one person showing up can change everything. Her favorite line is, "I didn't need a hero. I just needed someone who stayed." And Jake, he still works at the school, still fixes the heaters, still flips pancakes every Friday. Because sometimes, healing begins with the simplest act: someone noticing, someone staying, someone caring enough to ask, "Why won't she sit down?"